2030.
Saudi Arabia, the Public Investment Fund,
It's a
there's
big
a lot of
vision.
excitement
It's
around
transformational
NEOM specifically.
change. Every aspect of the kingdom, economic, social, cultural,
The
religious.
2030.
The 2030.
This is the 2030.
Yalla.
Let's go.
This is the 2030 episode 52. Dr. Hanaa and Lucien, hello. From London, look at us at our home bases for once. Like maybe a fifth of all episodes we've done it this way. How are you? Nice to
I'm
see
well, thank you. Short-lived, I'm sure.
you. Short-lived. I'm out of here tomorrow. You're going to Oman, right?
Yeah,
Tomorrow
inshallah.
or is it Friday?
No, I don't leave till Monday.
Okay. We got a little time then. We'll enjoy the weekend.
Do you know why I'm not leaving until Monday?
No, I don't, actually.
So my husband, Aziz, and I often play like tag team, and who's going to stay home while the other one has to travel for work. And Aziz is on his way to...
I know.
Yes.
Yep, I know now. He's going
Here
to
you go.
Omaha, right? Yeah.
He sure is. Yes. He is on his way to Omaha tomorrow for his annual pilgrimage to the annual shareholders meeting for Berkshire Hathaway, which for whoever does not know what that is the Warren Buffett convention.
It's the Woodstock for finance guys.
There
basically.
you go.
Yeah. I just saw the Wall Street Journal had a headline on it, and I was like, I bet Aziz is going to that. Yeah, that's
Aziz
awesome.
takes Team Green there every year.
And he's brought you guys too, right? You've been.
No,
and your
I've
family
never
as well.
been. I probably my son has been. Last year, we got Abdullah off of school for a couple days to go. It was really sweet.
That's cool. And did he love it? Like, it sounds awesome.
Yeah, he loves it, and he's been investing ever since. It's ridiculous. So I lost that battle of which the other one, the second son, will be the socialist in the family.
It's good. You got to plan for the future. You got to have one capitalist and one socialist, and then you can just kind of, you got to spread your bets out on the table.
There you go.
In that way. Go. That's exciting. Well, enjoy Oman. I hope Aziz enjoys Omaha. I think it's quite warm this time of year, but apparently that whole weekend thing is just the most unique, coolest thing, especially if you're in the business that Aziz is in, which is hedge fund stuff. So an investment. So anyway, that's awesome. Feedback on previous episodes. This is about our last episode, the deep dive in the Eastern Province, which I got a lot of informal feedback on, which was cool. Great deep dive from you, Dr. Hanaa. Abdul said you forgot to mention a great part about the EP, which is its proximity to Bahrain. Yeah, I thought that in the moment, and a lot of people love the Eastern Province for that reason, because Bahrain on the weekend is just a short drive away, or flight. I mean, there's a flight between Bahrain and how long is
there
that
is? I don't know
flight?
if you can. It's 15 minutes. I don't know if you can actually book it. You must be able to. Those have always been transit flights for me. You fly into Bahrain and then you fly into Dammam or whatever, like Lahran when I was a kid. But it's 15 minutes, yeah.
So but when you take off, it's you're up in the air for 5 minutes. It's mostly just takeoff and landing.
I think the Dammam airport is slightly further away than the old Lahran one was, which was the basically you don't even get up in the air. You're just kind of jumping over. It's a short flight. It's a drive across the causeway. There's no other way to get to Bahrain. Really, realistically, you're not going to fly. Unless, you're staying in an airport and you know what I mean? Transiting.
Yeah, and so how long is that causeway drive, roughly? I mean, zero traffic.
So no traffic. Usually it'll be 45 minutes door to door, leaving your home in Khobar or Dammam to whatever it is that you're going to in Bahrain. So the actual drive across the causeway is quite short, but door to door, 45 to an hour, depending on where you live, obviously. If you're in Khobar, you're closer to the causeway. If you're in Dammam, it's a slightly but it's all highway driving until you get to the causeway. So, yeah.
Interesting. Okay, this is also on your EP deep dive, Dr. Hanaa. This is from Trusty J06 on YouTube. My family and I will verify this Eastern Province is safe and good condition road theory. Oh, Eastern Province safe and good condition road theory this weekend as we visit Al Hafuf for the first time with a celebration emoji. Trusty, enjoy it, man. Enjoy it very much.
Yeah, hufuf is different though, right? Like hassa in general is different from what we were talking about. We were talking a little, I mean, hassa has a slightly different, like, I want to say legal setup as well. Like if you think of there's a different mayor, there's a different, it's Khobar Dammam Dhahran are kind of this tri-city or conurbation, if you want to say different British versus American terms for what they are. And then Lhasa is a huge part of the Eastern Province, but it's different and definitely way, way calmer than the rest. So it's very densely populated though. It's the most densely
Okay.
populated part of Saudi, I believe.
I think what was so cool about the Eastern Province that I kind of didn't know, and I'm a little bit embarrassed to admit this, but it's so big. Like I kind of thought
It's
of the Eastern
big.
Province as like, yeah, like it's Dammam and Al Khobar, but it's like a huge swath going
It's
all the way
Lhasa,
south.
it goes all the way north as well.
That's why I love this podcast. Forget our listeners. I am learning a lot while doing this, and that's really cool. In just a minute, we will be doing a deep dive. Yours truly. We'll be talking about the new Vision 2030 report for the year of 2024, issued, of course, this year in 2025. Looking back on, it's sort of like a gut check, a progress check on Vision 2030. We're going to get to that in a second. If you haven't subscribed to us, please do it. Wherever you're hearing this, like on any audio platform, and then YouTube as well. 29,000 subscribers now on YouTube. Dr. Hanaa, Mabruk to you.
29 plus.
That's right. Let's get to that deep dive. Okay, deep dive this week, Dr. Hanaa. Saudi Arabia rolled out, as I just mentioned, its Vision 2030 report for 2024, with the vision marking its 9th year. I think this is the 9th year that we're in right now. They just completed the 8th year. This is an annual report done by Saudi Arabia, done by Saudi authorities as a way of sort of updating the kingdom and the world as well, the outside world, on its progress with Vision 2030. And really, for that reason, these reports are valuable in two ways, I think. The data it shares and the updates themselves valuable. It's really good to get that sort of update, that sort of report card, I guess you could say, on how things are going. The vision is very complicated, 13 VRPs, you have national strategies, and the vision touches every sector, as people who listen to this podcast or watch this podcast know very well. It's a complex, huge operation. So it's good to get this sort of status check from Saudi authorities. The second reason it's, I think, valuable, I do want to come back to this point, but just make it right now, that the annual creation and publication of this document, that's valuable in and of itself. But let's start with the top level findings. Lots of good, lots of surprisingly great, actually. Some not so great. We'll talk about both. Let's start with the good. Let's do highlight reel style so we can kind of cover all of this. Let's start with, we'll start with a PIF, but essentially the top level takeaway of this thing is that Vision 2030's targets, several of them have been reached ahead of schedule, and others have been exceeded entirely. Some have already achieved their 2030 target and are now being revised upward. Things like tourism, which I'll get to as well. Starting with the PIF, the fund exceeded its 2024 target for assets under management, AUM, by $60 billion, which means they have a little coin left over to share with us. I'm sure PIF now manages about $940 billion of assets, 7% above its $880 billion target for the year. The kingdom's 2024 employment target was also met, this report said. 7% unemployment, beating a target of 7.8%. Great. Tourism, of course, big gains on goals when it comes to religious tourism. The number of Muslim pilgrims visiting Saudi Arabia's holy sites for Umrah, which of course is the non-mandatory pilgrimage, which may be performed at any time of the year, far exceeded targets at 17 million versus a target of 11 million. That's huge. And I think maybe the most interesting and encouraging of all the figures in this report was in home ownership. The home ownership target of 64% for 2030 was reached and actually slightly exceeded last year at 65.4%, the report shows. Of course, that sector does have more challenges ahead, but that is super encouraging. Was not expecting that. And the report also touches on private sector performance in 2024, which did remain strong. Saudi PMI at 58.1. That's really good. On inflation control, the kingdom was among the lowest and most stable in the G20. 93% in total of VRP and national strategy KPIs were completed or on track for completion in total. So that's really very good. You keep this up, 93% of Vision's targets reached by 2030 would be just, a boom scenario, home run for the kingdom. Two areas, though, and I hate to be the bearer of bad news, that the kingdom says it underperformed in. A big one, foreign direct investment, really big one, right? Saudi Arabia drew its lowest foreign direct investment figures in 4 years since 2020. And the news actually gets a little bit worse on the kingdom's foreign direct investment. Inflows fell for a third straight year. So the trend is not really in the right direction. And this is really a sign that efforts to grow solidly as an investment destination for Saudi Arabia are not really on the right track. And I think they're going to be working on that. Let's see. And then it gets a little bit worse too. The foreign investment figure for 2024 was 20.7 billion. Not great. And that's less than $2 billion more than it attracted in 2018, just as the vision was ramping up. Of course, it takes two to tango on things like that. On the buy side of this are global macroeconomic realities during this time, lower global liquidity, tighter monetary conditions. There's a lot going on in the world right now in the global economy. So some of that is controllable. Some of it isn't. On the other misses, Saudi GDP was at 937 billion, and that's not far off from its target of 956 billion. But non-oil GDP fell $14 billion short. Of course, we know non-oil GDP, name of the game, they're working on it, and there is growth there, but it just fell a little bit short of their target. I mentioned earlier this report, I think, was valuable for two reasons. Of course, the data therein, which we just discussed. But the second is the fact that Saudi Arabia is committed to this report itself. And the reason that is important, in my opinion, and I think for observers of Saudi Arabia with a longer view, like the two esteemed hosts of this show and many listeners, I think the issuing of this report itself is still noteworthy and I think laudable. This is low key such a big part of the Vision 2030 story. Saudi Arabia is not engaging in a transformation itself. I mean, it is, but it's doing so, I think, in the open with transparency and with accountability while it does it. And that's not just good policy, but it also builds trust and determination at every level of the government and among the people. On the missed targets I highlighted above, the kingdom fully acknowledges them and also says it's going to work on them. I mean, the report says on those two misses I just mentioned, on these areas of need, the kingdom does address this head on. And it says, let's see, where's the quote? Okay, yes. While some indicators have faced technical or economic headwinds, corrective actions are underway and closely monitored. I think this speaks to Vision 2030's strength, which is both in the ambition and execution, but also in sort of the buy-in, the ability for everyone to be on the same page, everyone to be enthusiastic about this journey and its destination, even if it's not a straight line forward. It's not, and it won't ever be. And I'm not saying that they're out there like only highlighting the faults in these reports or even attempting to draw a lot of attention to them. In fact, I found out about this report basically when it came out through the many LinkedIn accounts that were sharing highlights. Of course, they were sharing all the good news, and I think it's worth celebrating those achievements. What I'm saying is that it's great to look at what has been accomplished, celebrate those milestones, but it's even greater to see the things where improvement is needed and how a country can best those challenges. I mean, you cannot work on issues or problems with a program if you don't acknowledge them. I think the big point of celebration, in my opinion, is that Saudi Arabia is on the right track here. You can't read this report and say, well, they're not on the right track. I mean, in every metric, there is progress. The question is, how much is that progress? How far has that progress come? In some cases, it's exceeded what people have expected. In other cases, it needs some work. I think one more interesting thing about this report, I want you to jump in here, Dr. Hanaa. And this report is available. Put it in the comments of this video and of the podcast episode as well. Any platform. It's a PDF report. You can just open it on your phone or computer. The report notes this: in 2026, Vision 2030 will enter its third and final phase of delivery, a new chapter focused on entering full delivery mode, expanding opportunity across every sector and sustaining the impact well beyond 2030. Yeah, I mean, just a great report in and of itself, that it exists, that they're doing these annual reports. Of course, this is right around the time of year when the vision was launched. So it's an annual checkup on what's happening. Lots of encouraging data, and some sectors very encouraging. FDI, GDP, economic growth, non-oil economy, they all know that this is a huge focus. They're working on it. these are also the toughest of the challenges, one could argue. And so you have this sort of like openness that's being shared with this report that I think is emblematic of a new way of governing in Saudi Arabia. I just thought this report was rad. So I'll let you jump in.
Thank you so much, Lucien. Actually, after we recorded our last episode, I then got all these alerts about the vision report. So it is definitely the topic of the moment. And I think that what you highlighted is super important. I love the sentiment that you shared that without talking about the challenges, we wouldn't be achieving the vision. Because actually, one of the things that I really loved is the Crown Prince's kind of comments on this, which is basically his reaction was that we need to be proud of what we have achieved in these last 9 years. And the quote that I loved the most was that the men and women, or the men and women of Saudi Arabia, have proven that challenges cannot stand in the way of their ambition. And I love that, because it really is then highlighting who's working on these programs, which it is the citizens of Saudi Arabia. And it is the people that have come to Saudi Arabia to support in the growth of these different programs under the vision. And so I really love that, calling attention to the effort that goes forth, but also the ambition that has been created by launching the vision. There are a few things that you didn't highlight, and I think that they're really important in relation to where those challenges still exist. So specifically, when you were talking about how FDI hasn't necessarily met its target, I think the thing to note there is, however, we have attracted many headquarters into the kingdom, and that's exceeded the number of companies that are supposed to come and set up their headquarters within Saudi Arabia. So you have achieved, I think, what is the number?
It's 500 something, right?
517 or 571. I'm not seeing the number. It was in front of me, but then I scrolled away from that. Companies have come and set up their headquarters within the country. So this is going toward that FDI. And I think that this is a really important milestone. It's something that I think people were not necessarily sure about. In addition to that, there are a lot of companies that have come in to invest in social programs. There are a lot of companies that have come in to invest in setting up small and medium-sized companies and support in those areas. And I think that the report highlights some of those as well. And I think that the really interesting thing as well is when you're thinking about the economy and whether or not that's growing, the lowest ever unemployment rate going down to 7% is really important. So as we are growing slowly but surely in different sectors and non-oil sectors as well, you are getting more employment opportunities opening up for Saudis, which maybe they wouldn't have gone into in the past. And I think that that's really important. The country is getting more competitive, and they talk a little bit about kind of rising up in the rankings of competitiveness globally. So they're now number 16 globally in terms of competitiveness. So hopefully, as these other things around FDI continue to grow, you're also going to see more companies gaining a little bit of confidence that they maybe were on the fence about, that are just going to push them into the new phase of investing and really coming in and setting up bigger long-term projects. So I think there's a lot of positive things. The other thing, the last one I wanted to note, was thinking about, again, like everybody always wants to talk about how women going into the labor market for the first time, and the growth and the number of women within the labor market is a big win for the vision. And you didn't bring that up at all. I think it's important to say that, we have achieved a lot of growth in that area. It is definitely continuing to improve, and that's a really important thing to think about.
This was a non-exhaustive list of everything in the 100 and whatever page report or the executive summary. But those are really good points. And there's other things that I definitely missed that are really good. In total, you look at this thing, I think if you were to kind of imagine where it would be when it was launched, the theme we talk about a lot on the show, but you'd sort of say, well, this would be a really good outcome if this happens by 2025, if this is where you are, if these are your challenges, and if these are your accomplishments. Kind of the boom scenario, I would say, at least should have been at the top of people's expectations for a massive transformation, a self transformation within the span of 8 years, 9 years. Quite amazing. Um, yeah, and you mentioned Riyadh HQ and the sort of relocating foreign companies to have their HQ in Riyadh or in Saudi Arabia in general. That's the first step usually in creating more investment. I mean, if you have somebody who moves their office there, that means that they're physically present there, and if they're in the investing space, many of them are PE funds, other investor funds. I mean, their physical location there and their staff
Yeah.
there puts them adjacent to opportunities that will bring foreign capital in. So that program, even though it's like, it's not one to one or there's a linear sort of, relationship, that program will bear fruits over time. Because
Yeah.
if you're not there, then it's really hard to be making investments, right? So that's sort of step one in the process. They're doing a lot of the right things. There are programs that they need to figure out. I mean, look, foreign investment, it's really hard because you're dealing with the private sector, and the private
Yeah.
sector will only invest in really good opportunities that they think will make them money. But now you're starting to see that sort of crawl in. You're seeing PE infrastructure funds coming in with a allocation of $1 billion for local projects. You're going to start to see that more and more. That will help the FDI number a lot. You also have to keep working on things that are investable in Saudi Arabia, things that can attract foreign investment. So that brings in VC and other investment types of approaches that will help Saudi Arabia reach these numbers. And then, of course, the giga projects are huge investment opportunities, not just real estate, but infrastructure. Smart cities, all this other stuff is these are opportunities that are just about to really hit. So, inshallah, those contribute to a
Yeah. Well, as
successful
you say,
situation.
it's a work in progress. It's 9 years in. We're going into the final delivery phase, and I think that things are looking great. And not without the challenges. Like thinking about the starting point where we are today, I think is what the report is trying to get us to focus on. And you do need to celebrate the wins to get that momentum going. So congratulations on the last 9 years, and thank you so much for your work on this great deep dive.
Well, you are so welcome. Let's get to the news.
Let's get to the news.
Let's start off with this one, Dr. Hanaa. I thought this was super cool. This was sort of a long form article that I read about the 1001 festival, which just completed in Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia's 1001 festival receives really interesting high praise from a journalist attendee who was there. I believe he or she was an international Angelo de Guzman. I believe he was an international journalist going to check this 1001 festival out. And then the article was so awesome. He called the event a glimpse into the soul of a new Saudi Arabia, alive, vibrant, and ready to be heard on its own terms. I suggest everyone read this. We'll put this in the comments or the show description as well, and on the YouTube video if you're watching this. Journalist Angelo de Guzman from EDM Nomad wrote this about the festival. I'm going to read a little bit of it. Quote, "The Saudi desert whispered of change as the gates of 1001 Festival opened under the stars of Riyadh on April 24th and 25th. Unlike the soaring spectacle of Soundstorm, this event arrived quieter, smaller, but infinitely more meaningful. There were no headlining rappers, no genre collisions. This was not about attracting everyone. It was about calling the right ones, not an echo of the past, nor a repetition of the past. It was something new, something purely Saudi, a declaration in rhythm and light that a new generation of ravers had arrived. And they were telling their own story from the first beat at 8 p.m. until the last lingering notes at 4 a.m. Wow. It was clear that MDLBEAST was not just organizing a festival, they were planting a seed for the future. 1001 Festival felt less like an event and more like a revelation, a glimpse into the soul of a new Saudi Arabia, alive, vibrant, and ready to be heard on its own terms." End quote. Really awesome article, and glad this thing went off well.
Yeah, I mean, it's really interesting. I actually hadn't really heard of this, but I may be a little bit disconnected from the scene. However, longtime Saudi attendees and first timers alike really shared some super positive feedback. So it felt, according to some, it felt open, safe, very welcoming. And a lot of people believe that many people within Saudi Arabia have been craving something like this, not a mega sized experience like Soundstorm, but something more personal. So there was a quote from a reviewer: "No one here is trying to be seen." When attendee told us, "Everyone is just here to feel something real and have a good time." Another echoed. So, it seems like a really nice place. People came from all over the kingdom and other nearby Gulf countries as well. And for many, it was their first time hearing electronic music. For the veterans, it was the most respectful festival crowd they'd ever seen, which is great news because there's always been a little bit of a fear sometimes at these big events that things don't go as planned, but it seems like everybody was having a great time. And it seems like it was clean, focused energy throughout.
Yeah, which is awesome. I mean, like, so there are events that Saudi Arabia, a lot of events, many events, if not most, that Saudi Arabia puts on to attract a global audience to come visit, to come see. As we've discussed on this show before, there's something about going to Saudi Arabia for the first time that just completely wipes clean your understanding of the place. And for them to have, and Middle Beast is a private company, but for Middle Beast to do something that is different and that is focused on locals, that is meant to be just for those who attend, not to draw in crowds, but to be something for the fans of this style of music, EDM music, I think it shows a maturity in that company and in what they're building, right? So they built these events to attract people, and now they're building events for the audience they already have, and generating more of an organic audience of true enthusiasts of this type of music. I think it's just I think this is a cool story. It was a great read too. Kind of put me there,
In
into
the
the
rave
EDM
in the
scene.
rave
Yeah.
space.
Yeah, I was raving. So
Oh,
yeah,
never
anyway, cool.
yeah, never been to one, but I'm gonna pivot like really 180 degrees and talk about a completely different story where
Okay.
a little bit more serious, perhaps, that Saudi Arabia and Qatar have agreed to pay off Syria's debt to the World Bank, which is great news. And apparently, and actually, I read this. The sum is actually not very significant, but that's not really what this is about. It's more the symbolism and diplomatic power of that move, which is very, very noteworthy. And this is, according to a report in the New York Times, the payment by Saudi and Qatar could potentially unlock millions of dollars in aid and give a boost to the new government's task of rebuilding the economy that has just been completely shattered for the past 15 years by civil war. The joint payment will enable the World Bank to resume its support for other activities in Syria. I guess it's 14 years, but it feels more like 15. Who's counting? It'll also allow the new Syrian government to gain access to funds and technical support, which it really needs to rebuild institutions and to try and speed up development, which is what Qatar and Saudi Arabia said in a joint statement. So early hopes that Western sanctions imposed on Syria to punish the Assad regime would be then lifted based on this move and several other ones. So I think that that's really the key now to the next phase in Syria's development. The U.S. is taking a different route altogether. The Trump administration has imposed a number of conditions before it's going to lift the sanctions. So those include preventing Iran and its proxies from operating in Syrian territory. They've also expressed concern about the jihadist past of the new president, and his former links to Al Qaeda. But I think it's still, I think that you do need to move on to the next phase unless you want to see a resurgence of Al Qaeda. So it's a really tricky chicken and egg, but to me it seems very, very straightforward and just drop books, not bombs type of situation.
Yeah, and I think that Saudi Arabia and Qatar clearly agree with that. So do I. The Syrian government in Damascus, of course, the capital, expressed its, quote, deep gratitude for the move. Quote, it opens the door to activating cooperation with international institutions to serve the issues of recovery and reconstruction, the foreign ministry in a statement from Syria. Of course it does, right? I mean, like it gets it more access to international aid, which then helps its people rebuild after a really awful, way too long period of war and devastation. The government in Syria still faces major hurdles in trying to rebuild the country after the nearly 14-year war, which we just talked about, that led to the ouster of Bashar al-Assad in December. That was also amazing. Where is he? Is he in Russia?
I
He's just
believe he's
hanging
in
out.
Russia. Yeah.
Yeah, of course. Okay. Anyway, great story, great foreign policy move from Saudi Arabia. It's not that much money at all. I mean, in fact, an investment of this size in a private sector company or in a round of venture capital would not even make the news. This is a symbolic act that says, hey, we're on your side here. We're looking to the future. I wish the US would do the same thing because that would also mean a lot. But I think really cool. Yeah. We've recently seen a fresh US Saudi push to cooperate on developing a nuclear program in Saudi Arabia in the kingdom. The commitment to seal a deal made during US Energy Secretary Chris Wright's visit to the kingdom this month marks the most significant progress on the issue in 2023. As you probably know, this is an issue, a beautiful rose with many thorns. The US Saudi path forward is anything but certain here for many reasons. So far, Washington has historically insisted that in any civilian nuclear cooperation agreement, the kingdom forgoes uranium enrichment and reprocessing capabilities with potential military uses. Riyadh, of course, rejects those conditions, and HRH MBS, His Royal Highness, said himself on the Brett Baier Fox News interview that the kingdom would have to pursue such capabilities should Iran receive them. I mentioned Iran. Iran is likely factoring into all of this as President Trump seeks a deal to limit their acquisition of nuclear weaponry. And if it weren't complicated enough, even if the US and Saudi Arabia were to agree on such a deal, here is how it would work. Saudi Arabia and the US would both sign a 1-2-3 agreement for civilian nuclear cooperation. That is required by law in the United States for private companies to export technology for private companies, especially to export technology to a ally. And then from there, Congress has 90 days to shut that down. Now, it's not automatically put to the floor of Congress for a vote, but Congress can essentially, if it's bipartisan, especially at this point, put together a resolution and kill the deal. It can do that, has that power. So long road ahead, but wanted to add this. I'm really hoping this happens for Saudi Arabia, but also for the United States. United States, of course, invented this technology, has some of the best companies in the world. And this is a great opportunity for non-military US-Saudi cooperation to start building up again. Of course, this was looked at by President Biden, and it's such a complicated, regional issue in terms of diplomacy and politics because it was previously tied to relations with Israel and then the war in Israel, and the subsequent behavior of Israel after that, basically made this a very complicated issue, taking one sort of carrot off the table that might have been offered as part of this grand negotiation. I just want this to happen so badly for the United States first, for Saudi Arabia second. If it chooses not to go with the United States as a partner on this, there are plenty of other countries that don't have such a 1-2-3 agreement standard in place. South Korea, France, you name it, right? So it's not like they can't get this anywhere else, but I would love to see the U.S. be part of this.
And I would just love the world to kind of understand that the benefits of nuclear energy far outweigh the dangers. Obviously, one terrible disaster can have incredibly horrible consequences, but I mean, our current sources of energy also have a lot of consequences that we are continuously dealing with at the moment. And so I think that we definitely, you just need to do it right. There are negatives to everything, but nuclear energy really is one of the key solutions to sustainable energy in the future. And we just need to get over ourselves and think about the benefits of it and then just put into place the proper measures to make sure it's as safe as possible. So I do also hope that this happens if we want to be serious about sources of clean and sustainable energy in the future.
It is safe. I mean, it's safe now. There have been disasters. They were caused largely by human error, which
Yeah.
can now be double and triple and quadruple accounted for. I mean, the United States has several nuclear subs, and I believe Russia does too, where the whole sub can just run forever in the ocean, never has to go to port, powered by a nuclear reactor. I mean,
Yeah.
it's like it's the type of energy that is cleaner, certainly cleaner than coal and all of the fossil fuels, right? But I mean, like, we got to see this go down. So rooting for that as part of President Trump's upcoming visit, May 13th through 16th, I think. I will at least be there for that. I think you're there.
Oh,
right?
are you there to greet him?
No, not for that. Not for that. But no.
You're not there to greet the president? I thought
I
you'd
was
be,
waiting for
like,
my invite to get on AF1,
Mm.
take that the
Can you
president's
imagine
jet.
that length of a flight on the plane with Trump? Like, what would you? Never mind. Never mind.
I can't decide if I would just go back there and kick it with him and be like, what's up with the tariffs, dude? I don't know if it's working out so great. But then I would also simultaneously want to be like, this bedroom is mine, and then sleep the entire way and be like, that was the best flight I've ever taken. Anyway, yeah, cool. Get it done.
So, again, like, this is a kind of a pivoty news segment, but hopefully these are all
It's
useful.
heavily pivoty. You know what? There's a lot going on.
There's a lot of very varying news items that we need to talk about. So another large U.S. private equity plans to set up shop in Saudi this year, which is exciting. I think it's called I Squared. Am I going to do like Capital, an A1 situation here? Is this 1 squared or I squared?
I think it's I squared. Yeah,
right.
It's I squared. Yeah.
Okay.
That would be so annoying, by the way, if they're like, it's 1 squared, but we use a Roman numeral. Like, oh, come on,
Can you imagine? Well,
get over yourself.
Are we going to give, what's her name? Is it Betsy? No, that was the old one, wasn't it? What's her name?
Who? What are you talking about?
Did you miss the A1? You missed this? Who's the current U.S. Secretary of Education or whatever?
Oh my gosh. No, I know exactly what you're talking about. She called AI A1.
She called it A1, and she continued to talk about A1. It was just like the worst thing I've ever seen in my life. Like, well done. Glad she's in charge of education.
Yeah, of education. Idiot.
But anyway, so I Squared, I'm hoping, is called I Squared, plans to establish in Saudi Arabia and will hunt for acquisitions and deals in the infrastructure space in the Middle East. So the firm intends to open an office in the capital, Riyadh, in the fourth quarter, and has set a goal of investing $1 billion within its first 3 years of operation, according to Sadiq Wahba, the founder and chairman. So according to Bloomberg, I Squared has tapped Evercore's Ali Mandoor to lead the Middle East investment strategy. And the firm's goal is to hire as many as 8 staff for the Riyadh office initially, and then to add existing staff working on Middle East investments in Abu Dhabi and New Delhi as well. So Sadiq, the founder and chairman, said the biggest market and potential market for investments in infrastructure in size is without a doubt Saudi.
I Squared has about 45 billion AUM. There is increasing demand for private sector capital in Saudi Arabia. We covered it a little bit in the Vision 2030 report. And that's kind of the name of the game. This is a dream situation for Saudi Arabia, where you have a foreign smart money, I Squared, 45 billion AUM, saying there's growth in this market. Let's set up an office here. Let's take advantage of these opportunities that are here. Let's commit to it. Let's commit $1 billion of what we have under management to, score some of these deals. Saudi Arabia is looking to grow foreign direct investment 5-fold over the next 5 years. So this is going to help, but it needs a lot more things like this to make it happen. And for that reason, it's good news, right? I Squared said that it has about 40% of its capital invested in the U.S., followed by Latin America and Southeast Asia. So this is a new sort of market, a new foray for I Squared. If they hadn't been doing it before, they're doing it now as part of a strategy, right? So definitely good news. Definitely cool. Hey, you know what? We ended this episode on some good news, which we should try to do in the future. We've had a couple that have randomly been like, oh, and sadder news. And then it's like, okay, goodbye. So that's good news. On a positive note, we end this episode. Dr. Hanaa, shukran. Thank you very much. Nice to see you.
Thank you.